Most of us love to crochet as a form of relaxation, but there are times when being able to crochet faster has its benefits. Whether you're a beginner trying to improve your speed, or you're simply working on a project that you need to finish fast, I have 10 strategies that I want to share with you today that will help take things up a notch without compromising the quality of your work. Now, we all know the best way to get better or faster at something is to practice, right? That's a no-brainer. But how we practice is super important. So my first tip is don't force it. Instead, slow down and relax. Now that probably sounds counterintuitive, but what happens when we consciously try to get faster is we start tensing up, which actually slows us down more. And because we're trying to be so fast, we start making silly mistakes. Along with that, forcing it, we can even cause ourselves injuries, and that's what happened to me. A couple of years ago, I learned how to knit using the English style method, and although I was getting pretty fast with that, I wanted to learn how to knit continental style because it's known for being faster and more efficient. Plus, all the cool kids were doing that, and I wanted to be a cool kid too. Well, instead of taking the time and practicing consistently, I tried to master this in a week, and I gave myself a repetitive stress injury. I had to take a break for several weeks. So trying to force the issue definitely did not work out for me. Now, don't get me wrong, experimenting with a new method is an awesome way to gain speed, and I definitely recommend this as tip number 2. I wish I could tell you that one method of crocheting is going to be faster than the other, but it's simply not true. I've seen crocheters that hold their hooks like a pencil crochet just as fast as someone that holds it like a knife. The secret here is finding the method that suits you best. And trying different ways doesn't have to be a huge change. It could be a simple little tweak that makes all the difference. For example, if you're a knife holder and you grip primarily with your index finger and thumb, you might find by gripping with all of your fingers makes things flow better, and that's going to be what increases your speed. Or if you hold like a pencil with your yarn tensioned close to your finger, you might discover lifting your finger ever so slightly improves the movement and you get faster. It's all about what feels comfortable to you, and if it's feeling natural to you, you're going to get faster with that technique. And this goes for the hook you're using as well. One size does not fit all. Some crocheters swear by inline hooks where others find it splits their yarn. Some love plastic and bamboo hooks where others love the glide of aluminum and steel. Me personally, I go for the ergonomic hooks with a tapered neck, but that's because the rubber handle helps me to stay pain-free. And with a tapered hook, I can easily glide through those stitches. For me, it feels good in my hand, which in turn makes me faster. But you may find that these are too short for your hands and just don't work. Side note here, don't get caught up in the cost of a hook thinking it will make you faster or give you better results. I made that mistake thinking I had to have a Furls Odyssey crochet hook. I had been wanting one of these for ages, and my daughter worked really hard to get me one because it was always sold out. Guess how much I use it? Never. And that's because it's not suited well for my hand. It's heavy and it's a better fit for a knife hold. Plus, it's slightly too long for me. So again, experimenting is really good. Be sure to try different hooks, but more expensive doesn't necessarily mean better. I would say out of everything, the tensioning of your yarn can play the biggest part in your speed. You want your yarn to easily glide through your fingers in a controlled way, but you don't want resistance. I'm not saying there's a certain way you should be holding your yarn particularly, but one way may be more suited for the yarn that you're using over another. For example, I like to wrap the yarn around my pinky finger and then over my index finger when I'm working with a lightweight yarn. But when I try to do that with bulky yarn, it's constantly snagging and getting caught. So as soon as I started just holding it between my index and middle finger, that made all the difference. It flowed through my fingers much more smoothly and increased my speed dramatically. And my final tip for proficiency is to keep your hands dry. So I recommend that you save the lotion until after you've crocheted or when your short's completely soaked in. If you live somewhere where it's hot and humid like I do, talcum powder can really help. You'll notice that this was a thing for knitting competitions. Look how they even sprinkled it on their needles. I'm telling you, dry hands equals speed. Now, if you're looking for ways to save time as far as the project you're working on, these are my top 5. Number 1, get that ball of yarn under control. If you've watched this type of video before, then I'm sure you've heard this tip before about pulling your yarn from the center, and that's because it really is a huge time saver. Instead of stopping every few seconds to unwrap the yarn when you're pulling from the outside, If you're using it from the center, it just pulls out effortlessly. It's like heaven. Now granted, many balls are not designed where the center is easy to pull from, so I like to use an inexpensive winder and rewind it into a center pull, but you can do this by hand as well. It's just a little bit more time consuming. Now, if this is all a hard no for you, a good option is a yarn holder. This way the yarn stays in place and pulls more smoothly. You can even try a paper towel holder. I did that once and it worked pretty well. A yarn bowl is great, but I do find that the ball will snag and get caught, and I still have to stop and physically unwind it a little to get it to work. So I found that working with smaller balls of yarn just sitting next to me makes a big difference. Because it's smaller, there's not as much unrolling going on, and it's just a quick flick of the wrist and I'm back in action. Number 2, work with stitch patterns that you can easily memorize. You can never go wrong with granny clusters and V-stitches. The added benefit to these stitches is that they create spaces that are easier to count and work into, which I've also found saves me a lot of time. And to take it a step further, use a self-striping or ombre style yarn. This will give a little razzmatazz to those simple stitches and also save you a lot of time since you don't have to weave in a ton of ends. Combine that with a bulky yarn and you'll whip up your next blanket in a few hours. Another way to save a lot of time is to make notes for yourself instead of referring back to a video or written pattern. If I'm working on a wave pattern, for example, I'll jot the sequence down on a piece of paper in a shorthand that makes sense to me, instead of trying to search through the pattern to see where I left off. This saves me a ton of time, and just keeping notes in general does. I talked about this in another video because it helps me so much. Not only can I see where I left off, I can jot down what hook I was using, what yarn, whatever it takes to help me quickly get back on track. And number 5, stitch markers. Even when a pattern doesn't specifically call for using stitch markers, I find them to be a great time saver when I'm trying to keep count of my stitches or to keep track of the first and last stitch of a row. If you're working on a big project, add a stitch marker after each 10th or 20th stitch. Then when you reach the end, you just need to tally your stitch markers instead of having to go through to count each individual stitch. Remember, the goal is to crochet faster without sacrificing the quality of your work and the joy you get from crocheting in the first place. I promise the speed will come with time as you develop your own unique style of crocheting. Just take the time that you need to find your own rhythm and enjoy the process of becoming a more efficient crocheter. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, a like is always appreciated. I'd love to know if you have any tips on crocheting faster. Please leave them in the comments for all of us to see. And if you like these type of videos, here's another that I think you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.